Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, and welcome to today's webinar. I'm Vishakha Bhave from Exxat, and joining me today and helping me with the webinar is my colleague Kanti. She's a senior product leader in Exxat, and she will be manning the questions. So thank you for taking the time today. We have a big group of attendees today. And what's special about today's webinar is, in addition to all our extended Exxat family and all the nursing partners that we work with, we also have nursing programs from all across United States who are not our customers yet, but are interested to know more about our product joining in today. So a special welcome to all of you. Today's webinar is about leveraging Exxat Prism for mapping and tracking the new AACN Essentials. And let me go ahead and go in the presentation mode. A couple of housekeeping announcements before we get started. So this webinar is going to be recorded, and you all will receive a copy of the recording in the form of an email within a day of the webinar end. You will also see that in the handout section of the GoToWebinar control panel, you will be able to see an attached deck that I'm using today. I will be using a combination of this deck, as well as I'll go in the live system to show you some dashboards and reports to make the experience a little more interactive and to give you a better feel of how we are able to support with all these functionalities. We also have a question and Q&A section in the GoToWebinar panel. We encourage all of you to type in any questions or comments that you have in that section. Kanti, my colleague, will be continuously monitoring it, and we do have question breaks that we have baked into today's presentation. So time permitting, we'll address as many questions as we can. If due to time restrictions we are not able to get to your question, do not worry. You'll either receive a response to your question on the individual chat, or we'll reach out to you via email to answer your question. If you have any technical challenges, you can also utilize the chat feature, and I also have my colleague Skylar who can help you resolve any issues that you're having. With that said, I think it's time to get started, and hopefully I am clearly audible. Kanti, if you could just confirm that for me once.
Yes, Vishaka.
All
Loud and
right. All right, thank you. So what I'll do is, I have started the closed captioning, but just to be able to focus on the actual presentation and to save the precious screen space, I'm going to turn off my camera. I'll turn it on when we take the questions break. So I'm just temporarily switching off my camera and then go into the presentation. So the way I'm going to divide our 56 minutes or so is that I'm going to walk you through what are all the high level capabilities in Exxat Prism that can help you adopt competency based education and the new AACN Essentials. I've divided it up into 3 broad steps. The first step is designing an essentials ready curriculum. And here I'm going to talk about all the tools related to curriculum mapping and what kind of bird's eye view and granular reports that we support that will help you with mapping and gapping, backward design, all of that. The second step is going to be creating a competency framework, and where we'll be talking about all the different tools to track exposure and achievement. And the third step is measuring competency achievement by your students to drive enhancements. So this is how I'll be breaking up the whole presentation, approximately 15 to 20 minutes for each part of this presentation. At the end of the webinar, you will understand how Exxat Prism is not only supporting you to track whether the students have finished their clinical rotations or not, or how have they scored on the clinical rotations, have they met the program requirements or not. But in addition to that, via today's webinar, you will also be able to see that we do support tools that will allow you to measure and analyze where each of your student is with respect to achieving the essentials, and to what extent have they mastered or acquired the skills that they need before they graduate from your program? What kind of interestable professional activities that the students are doing. So in addition to the traditional metrics that you use, you will also get to learn about these three new things via today's webinar. All right, so before we dive into the actual presentation, we would love to do a quick poll and get your responses on this following question. Do you currently use a competency tracking tool other than Exxat Prism or your learning management system, which could be Canvas or Blackboard? Okay, so I think the response that we got was majority of the people are not
No.
using any
Yeah.
other tracking tool, right? Okay, that's good because if you're already using Exact Prism, you might not need it. So we'll see via this presentation. All right, so then I'll share my screen again, my deck, and go into the presentation mode. Thank you all for that response. So we all are aware that competencies can be knowledge based, skill based, or attitude or behavior based. And they're acquired not just from the clinical rotations, but right from the first course that a student takes, which could be their didactic phase of the curriculum, right? And so for you as a school user, you would want a tool that would help you cover your competencies or teach them during the entire curriculum, and also be able to track exposure to students for these competencies and these standards across the curriculum, not just for clinical or for didactic. And we have kept that in mind as we have designed some of the competency tracking tools and curriculum mapping tools. So we'll take a look at what are those tools. So talking about the broad steps, in the first 15 minutes, we look at how our curriculum mapping tool allows you to do mapping and gapping, backward design, and gives you bird's eye view as well as granular reports for your curriculum mapping. Now, you could be a nursing program that's developing or a new program, and you are trying to create a curriculum from scratch, and you want to do it in such a way that you are adequately covering the new essentials. Or you could be an established program and you already have a good curriculum in place and you don't need to make any tweaks. Or you could be a program which is established, but your curriculum was designed based on the old essentials, and now you're doing a revamp of your curriculum just to make sure that it talks to all the essentials, all the domains, competencies, and subcompetencies, right? So you are checking those off. Now, it doesn't matter which category of nursing programs out of these three you belong to, because our curriculum mapping tool will offer you something for each of these categories. And as I go through this tool, I'll talk a little more about it. Coming to step two, once you have a robust curriculum built and you're satisfied with it, that okay, I think we are pretty confident that this curriculum will help us cover all the essentials adequately. The second part, and the uh, I guess the trickier question is, you may have the best curriculum in place and you're teaching students everything that they need to learn, but accreditation council always comes back and asks, okay, how do you know they're learning it? What's the proof that they're achieving some of these essentials during the curriculum, during their didactic and clinical phases? So it is very important to be able to showcase that the students have met or achieved some of these competencies that you want to track. So creating an assessment framework that will enable you to track these student achievement of these competencies becomes crucial. So in step two, we'll be talking about how to create that competency framework. Which learning activities will you use? Will you use patient logging? Will you use activity logs? Will you use evaluations, exams, quizzes? How are you going to teach, and how are you going to measure the exposure and achievement of those? And then you will, in this step, you will also map your assessment questions to competencies that they help you test, because once that mapping is done, then you can get reports based on where the student stands when their scores come in, right? So that's the second step, and I would say it's the most important step and majority of the work. And then the third step is where you get to sit and relax and glean insights from the dashboards that our system creates for you. So the measuring and analyzing of the competency part, once you've done your hard work in step 1 and 2, step 3 is where Exxat Prism does the hard work and you get to leverage the reporting, right? And this is where we'll give you real-time reports and dashboards for student, for cohort. You'll be able to identify lagging students. We'll give you qualitative as well as quantitative formats for tracking, and you'll be able to visualize all data based on different filters and data sets. So I'll be walking you through all of these. And once you've finished doing all of this, you will realize that you'll be able to complete your curriculum assessment loop. You'll be able to drive any enhancements that you feel like you need. And all these reportings will also help you with your accreditation reporting. So that's the goal that we have in mind. So let's dive into step 1, which is designing an essentials ready curriculum. Now, when we talk about designing a curriculum, I'm sure you all realize this, that you only have one curriculum that you can design, but that one curriculum should help you meet multiple standards or competencies. So for example, this webinar is going to focus on the essential domains, competencies and sub-competencies, but that's not the only thing that you as program administrators have to worry about. If you are an undergrad program or entry level program, you want to worry about, is the curriculum meeting the 4 spheres of care? Or is the curriculum also incorporating the 8 concepts of nursing practice? Or it could be your track specific competencies or the nurse practitioner core competencies. The same curriculum should be able to keep up with all of these different standards. And that's why the way our curriculum mapping is designed is it will allow you to customize and design a curriculum that can help meet multiple standards. So to give you more insights into this, I'm going to actually take you in the live system, and these screenshots are there for you for your reference. And later on, if you want to refer back to them. So I'm going to click escape and actually take you to the live system. So this is the live system, and whenever an administrator logs in, this is the landing page or the dashboard that they land on. From here, when you click on program details and click on standards, you will see a list of all the standards that nursing discipline that are relevant to the nursing disciplines. Now, because this is our demo stub, you will see all kinds of standards, right? For all the tracks for undergraduate as well as graduate nursing. However, when you are onboarded on Exxat Prism, you will only get the ones that are relevant for you, and you can decide which ones you want to activate and use and which ones you don't want. For the purpose of this presentation, I'm going to show you, for example, the essentials, right? So here we have divided up the essentials based on entry level professional nursing and advanced level nursing. And the reason we have divided it is because we know that for entry level programs, you're more interested in tracking the 1.1A to D, versus if it's advanced level, then you want to track the E, G, and Fs, right? So we have segregated them for you. These come pre-populated. There's no work needed on your side to spend any time populating them. They come pre-populated and they are ready to be used by you for your curriculum mapping. If we scroll down, you will also see program specific standards, and this is the customizable portion. So if you have student learning outcomes that are specific to your program, if you have university goals that you want to track in addition to some of these nationally published standards, you're able to do that. You just upload your customized standards list and it gets populated here and it's ready to use. So it's as simple as that. It's very customizable. Once your standards are in place, then you go to the curriculum mapping part, right? So when you click on curriculum mapping, you'll see a nice view where you can see all your different curricula based on the programs that you have. You may have undergraduate, graduate, within graduate, you may have different tracks. that you want to track, and each track may have its own curriculum and group of courses that are offered, right? So our system gives you a nice aggregation of all the courses. For example, this is AACN curriculum for this particular track, and you can see all the courses that a student enrolled in this track has to complete before they can graduate, and it's nicely organized by academic year and then divided by terms in which these courses are offered. If you, and because this is mock demo data, you might not see all the courses. Of course, there'll be more courses than what I'm showing you. But if you click on one of these courses, this is where you get to build your course, right? And the main component of the course that you will need for your curriculum mapping are the course objectives, the learning outcomes, right? And you may call it as instructional objectives or learning outcomes. These labels are customizable. So whatever you call them, you're going to see here, right? And we'll set it up that way for you. Now, this is where you add all your course objectives. It's very easy to add. You add a course objective, give it a description, and while you're adding, you can also collect extra attributes. What kind of assessments are being used for this? What lifespan category does this topic cover, right? So these are additional attributes that can be set up in the system, and you can collect all of these. So for example, for this objective, we've already collected what is the assessment code, the lifespan. These attribute categories are again customizable. These are some sample categories that we have created, but it's entirely up to you what you would like to track. And all these things will make more sense when I share some reports for you, but this is as easy as that. Once this is built out, once you have entered all these course measures into the system, then comes the mapping these course components to the essentials. But before I move there, I do want to clarify that depending on where you are in your program with designing your curriculum, you may already have all this in form of excels. So when we onboard you, if you have everything in the form of an excel, we import it for you, so you don't have to actually go in and type each of these things by yourself. But on the other hand, if you are a new program who hasn't yet designed their curriculum and they're building these course objectives or course outcomes from scratch, we provide a very nice user interface for you to do it in the system itself. So we're saving the duplicate work for you, right? So now let's assume that all of the course objectives and the courses are there in Exxat Prism. Now let's click on mapping. And when you click on here, whichever faculty or your curriculum chair or self-study chair or director, whoever is responsible for mapping this course to the essentials comes to the screen. And these are the course objectives. And if I click on the course objective on the right hand side, I'm going to see all the standards that the administrator has set up for mapping. So depending on your program, you may want your curriculum to be mapped to the essentials, but in addition to the essentials, you may want to map it to the nurse practitioner core competencies, or you may want to map it to track specific competencies. So you can map your curriculum to multiple standards in one go. At high level, it will tell you that this particular course objective is mapped to 18 essentials. And if I click on that, I get a list of all the essentials that are mapped to this particular course objective. And I can toggle, I can go to the next objective and keep on this mapping activity, right? So let me go back and actually show you. If I wanted to add, so right now, this particular objective is mapped to 1.1 E, F, and D, and 3.4. Now, I can click on this mapping, modify it, edit it. I can even tell the system whether the content covered by this particular objective is a skill-based content, a knowledge-based content, or an attitude or behavior-based content. And for each of these categories, I can say whether it's being introduced, reinforced, or demonstrated. And there's a report that we build out for you where this data will be shown, which helps you demonstrate the sequence and rigor of your curriculum from one course to another, right? So if you want to go at granular level, this is the granular level at which you can collect all the mapping data. For now, I'm just going to close on this. If I wanted to map it to additional essentials, I would just click on add mapping. And here I would click on any essential which I want to map it to. So for example, I think this objective also maps to 1.1F. I'm going to go ahead and select 1.1G as well. Now, one question that I get from multiple nursing programs is which level of mapping do you allow? Our system is very flexible. So if you as a program think that for your program, mapping it at a competency level, so at 1.1 level is sufficient, go ahead and do that. Our system will not stop you. On the other hand, if you're a program that thinks, no, we want to map our curriculum at the sub competency level, which is 1.1E, you can even do that, right? So our system is very flexible. Depending on your programmatic needs, you can undertake the mapping at that level. And although I'm going to pick and show you from for either advanced level essentials or a graduate nursing program or an undergrad program in some screenshots, rest assured that all the features that I'm showing you are equally available irrespective of what kind of nursing program are you working with. So all these features are available to all kinds of nursing programs. All right, so the mapping is as easy as that. I want to show you one more thing, which I really love about this design. You see the red dot here by this outcome because it doesn't have any mapping. If you can see 0 mappings on the right hand side in the parenthesis. What this tells me is it's drawing my attention that I do want to take a look at this learning outcome and get it mapped because there's no mapping. So imagine your faculty who's working with this course. This kind of design helps them quickly identify the course components that have not been mapped yet, and it catches their attention for further action. So so mapping is as easy as this, right? And once all this hard work is done, because this is going to take some time for your team to go ahead and do these mappings, in case you already have these mappings in sitting in an Excel or some external files, we also offer you the support and the option to import them, and our team members will help you with that as an add-on service. So even that service is provided by us. So you can choose to do it yourself, hands-on in the system. It's very intuitive. Or if you need differential support to import some of your existing data, we're here to help you. All right, so let's talk about after all this hard work is done, now is the time to reap the benefits of this curriculum mapping. And for that, from here, we're going to click on mapping reports. And in these reports, first of all, you will land on a dashboard. This is a bird's eye view of the dashboard that gives you an overall idea of where is your program with curriculum mapping, how much progress is made. So you see this mapping summary. We are currently looking at a particular curriculum. So you can pick which curriculum you want to work with. And depending on the number of tracks and programs, you may have multiple curricula. So pick one curriculum. And for that, I can see that there are 3 standards for which there is mapping. And if we just talk about essentials, 191 essentials out of 259 have some kind of mapping available. On the right hand side, you get course-based mapping. So for each of these standards, you have 7 out of 8 courses that have been mapped to the essentials. 4 out of 8 courses mapped to the non-PF nurse practitioner core competencies, right? So it's a nice bird's eye view. If I scroll down, let's look at some of these attribute reports that I was talking about. For example, if you want to see how lifespan is covered in your entire curriculum, across your curriculum, this is a nice view for that. So dividing the lifespan by these different categories, older adults are being covered for maximum number of times across your curriculum, followed by adults, followed by adolescents. And then if you are interested in seeing in which courses are these age groups being covered, if you scroll down, you get a nice tabular report which shows you which course objective is covering which of the above lifespan categories. So imagine having this kind of report in front of you if you are writing a narrative for self-study report, a standard that talks about lifespan. Right? So that's the value of collecting these attributes when you're doing the curriculum mapping. And our account managers and customer success specialists are trained to recommend the best kind of setup that will get you the kind of reports that you need based on your mapping goals. So you get all that support included when you sign up with Exxat. So I'll show you one more attribute report because this attribute is also important. This is the assessment code. What kind of assessment methods or codes are you using across your curriculum? And these are all the different kinds of assessment tools that you're using in the curriculum, and which course is utilizing which of these assessment codes. So again, this is a very useful report based on our user feedback. So I quickly wanted to show you both these reports. Now, this is an overview, and there are way more reports, but in the interest of time, I'm going to highlight the most important reports for Essentials. Let's click on the Essentials, because now all the data that you see on this dashboard is about all the mapping done for the Essentials. And here you can see I can click on the Essentials, and on the left hand side is a list of all the Essentials. I can click on any essential. Right now I'm clicking on 1.1e, and on the right hand side I get a list of all the courses and course components that have been mapped to 1.1e, right? And I can toggle to another essential, and I can get a list of all the mappings for that essential across all the courses. If I want to print this, I can go to customize your view. I can tell the system I want all the details included in my report, or I can exclude all of these details. I can save it. I'm not going to save it right now, and then I can export it. I have an option to export in Word format and Excel format, and I'll show you how the Excel format looks like in a minute. But even the report is customizable. How much you want to include in your report is customizable. Say you are a director or curriculum chair and you really want to see, do I have any unmapped essentials that I need to look at? Here's your list. So you filter on unmapped standards and you get a list of all the essentials that have no mapping yet. And this is your action item to follow up with your faculty or with your team. Hey, why don't we have any mapping for these essentials? Is it that they are not being covered adequately in the curriculum, or is the mapping process not complete yet? So for either case, you want to follow up with your teammates about it, right? So now, this is great for administrator. What about you? What about if you're an individual faculty and you're responsible for mapping one individual course? Then a flipped view of this becomes very handy. So this is a flipped view. So instead of an essential based view, this is a course based view, and I can click on any of the courses on the left, and on the right, I will see all the essentials that this course is mapped to. So it's a flipped view. Nothing else changes. It's just that your anchor for this report has changed, right? So these are course-based view and standard-based view are two kind of reports that are very popular, right? Now, once you have done this, there's also a tagging feature which allows you, for example, it's a team activity. For a lot of programs, tagging is a team activity. And if you are a faculty and you've done your mapping, but you want an opinion from your supervisor or director, is this mapping correct? You can mark it as needs review or tentative, and then your chair or director can review it, approve it. So we have that tagging functionality as well. So these are all the small enhancements that will make this process really good for you. All right, so then I'm going to go back to my deck and show you a couple of other reports that are very useful for curriculum mapping. I think I went through all of these. So this is the Excel export report, the way how it looks. So every column is an essential, every row is a course and course component, and the check marks tell you which course or course objective covers which essential. So it's a nice Excel based report that you can further play with. And we went through this. This is another report that's very positively received by our customers, not just in the nursing programs, but in medicine, pharmacy, PT, OT, PA, all disciplines. It's called the cumulative report. And the advantage of this report is if you are mapping your curriculum to multiple standards. So you can see here, this is an example of entry level essentials. so for an undergraduate program. And in addition to entry level professional nursing, you can also see how the curriculum is mapped to IPEC core competencies or lifespan or spheres of care, or you can also see the learning level, for example, whether it's being introduced or reinforced or demonstrated. Now, what is valuable is that for a given course, for each objective in that course, you're getting to see multiple standards covered by that objective in one view. Now, if you looked at the AACN curriculum mapping template that's uploaded on the AACN website on the toolkit, what they are asking you to collect, the information, that template, compare it to this report. You'll see that everything that they're asking you to collect in there, including assessment code, is available in this report. So we have tried to design it and give you everything that you need to do that mapping and gapping and backward design. This is another report that is very popular. We call it the crosswalk instructional levels. I know this can be a little tiny for you, so I'll give you an overview and then I'll zoom in so you can see it better. But this is an Excel export. Every row in this is an essential, and every column is a course or a course objective. And the three colored bars that you see are telling you which course covers a skill based content, knowledge based content, or behavior based content, and whether it's taught at introductory level, reinforcement level, or demonstrated level. And as you move from left to right, or as the student takes their first course to their last course, you should be expecting to see more reinforced and demonstrated and more skill based courses as they enter their clinicals, right? So let me quickly, let's see if I can. So quickly zooming in and showing you the previous cumulative report, and hopefully you're able to see this report that I talked about where you can track multiple standards for the curriculum. And then this is the zoomed in version. So here you can see that each row is an essential and each column is a course objective, which is in turn part of a course, right? So on the top, this is teaching practicum 5011, and you have 4 objectives under this course. And wherever you see this, it indicates that it is helping you cover 1.1e and you're teaching skills, knowledge, and attitudes at introductory level. And some components will just focus on skills, others will focus just on behaviors. And then as I scroll from left to right is when I should be able to see more reinforced and more demonstrated here, right? So that's the whole idea of this report. Um, these were the high level curriculum mapping reports. There are way more curriculum mapping reports that are there, but in the interest of time, I'm going to pause here. And before we dive into actually tracking these competencies, I want to take a pause and see if there are any questions that I can quickly address before we move on. So Kanti, if you can help me with any questions that have come up.
Sure, Vishak. I think there's a lot of interest in these modules. One question, if you can help us answer, like how to get access to the modules we are covering today, and who gets the access? I think that's a question we got a few times.
That's a very, very spot on question. First of all, how to get access to these modules. All these modules that I'm covering today is available with your Exxat Prism subscription. Now, if you're already an Exxat user, you already have access to this. So reach out to your account manager, and if you're in the onboarding phase, to your CSS, and they will walk you through this process for the setup. If you are not yet an Exxat Prism subscriber, and if you're interested in getting this, I have a slide at the end. You can request a demo at sales@exxat.com, and I've included that email in the last slide of this deck. And we would love to give you a detailed demo and talk more about how you can get access to these modules. Let me also talk about the second part of the question. How does role-based access work? Now, depending on your role in the program, we work with your super administrator, right? And ask them, how many users do you have in the program? Which users need what level of access? If a user needs only a faculty access and they only need access to specific courses that they are managing, we'll only give them access to that via our faculty module, which is a restricted module. If you are an administrator or you need a broader scope of data access, then you get the administrator role. So we support three personas: administrator access, faculty access, and student access. And depending on your role with the program, you can either get a full access or a limited access. And based on which courses you are associated with, which students you are mentoring, which placements are you supervising, we can control your access that way. So I hope that answers the question.
Thank you, Vishaka. That is helpful. One more question about the standards. So, do the standards get added by default, or do the schools need to give us that
Yeah,
information?
the standards do get added by default. You do not have to add any nationally published standard. If you have your own program specific student learning outcomes that you have created, you can give us the list, and we can populate it for you. So yeah, it's all covered. They're pre-populated.
Okay, those are the questions, Vishaka. Just a
Okay.
small note. When you are covering competency mapping, I think integration is something maybe as a note for you to cover as you cover
Of
the
course.
competency mapping.
Yeah, we'll cover that. All right.
Okay.
In the interest of time, moving on. So this brings up to step two, which is creating a competency framework. Now, this is probably the hardest part and the longest time that you will need to take with your team members to decide on what does your competency framework look like. Now, at the risk of oversimplifying, I have broken it up into 5 steps depending on how we have designed the product to help nursing programs adopt the essentials. And this is an oversimplification because this is a process that requires a lot of brainstorming within your team members, within your faculty groups, for you to decide A, which competencies you want to track, right? And right now it's essentials, but you may also want to track other competencies. B, how which learning activities do you want to utilize as way to expose your student or to teach them these competencies and essentials, right? It could be via lectures, it could be via labs, simulations, case studies. Especially for the clinical curriculum, you may want to think about patient logging, time logging, activity logging, right, for DNP programs. Then in step 3, you want to identify which assessments do I want to utilize to measure achievement of student competencies. And this could be exams, quizzes, evaluations that the preceptors and faculty fill for the students. And the reason I call this out, because you may have 20 assessments, but you may only want to consider 10 out of those 20 assessments to be to contribute towards the competency score. So we are giving you that flexibility. Step 4, mapping the assessment questions to skills and competencies. This is a one-time activity that you have to do, and you have to tell us that this evaluation question maps to this particular essential or competency. And once you have done that, every time a student receives a score on that evaluation or that question, our system will compute a competency score or will consider that. And last but not the least, you want to set rubrics and minimum threshold. What should be the scoring scale? What does good look like for your program? What is the minimum score, competency score, that you want each of your students to achieve? So these are some of the questions where you will need to work with your team. Our experts, our account managers and CSS will work with you, share the best practices so this process becomes a little easier for you. So we'll support you to the extent that we can, but this work will have to be done by your team in collaboration with our team. And the whole goal when we designed our product for this was to let you, the educators, focus on improving the student learning outcomes and do the instruction part of it so that our system can do the heavy lifting of data crunching, aggregating data across Excels. You don't have to worry about any of that busy work. Once you set it up in this way, our system will give you dashboards and reports. You can just sit back and draw insights from those. And you can just focus on the instruction and improving of student outcomes as educators. So that's the overall goal for designing this. So let's look into it. So our system will provide you tools to track student exposure to some of these competencies and then measure achievement. And these two are very different things, because you can say you're exposing students to all these things, but unless they learn it and it is evident via their scores, you won't be able to show that the students have achieved it, right? So we understand that. And these are all the questions that AACN Toolkit is asking you to consider as you build your competency framework. And we've also referred to that. And based on that, we have designed the curriculum, we have designed this product, which will allow you to track exposure and track achievement of these competencies. And this could be via evaluations, assessments, it could be quantitative score based or qualitative. I'll show you examples of all of those. So let's first talk about exposures. So this is an example of a DNP activity log. And let me go full screen. Sorry, I was not full screen. And this is where a student is logging the activity that they are performing while they are in their clinical rotation. And they're also able to check off which essentials did they get exposure to while doing this activity. Now, note that this is student self-reported. This is not an evaluation that the preceptor or faculty is giving. So this is a good tool to track exposure of students to essentials. And once your students do that, you as an administrator get to review, oh, across all the rotations, this is how the essentials were covered for my students across all their rotations. What was the division? How much time was spent with each of these essentials across all the activities that the students give? So you may see that for some of the essentials, they're elaborately students are elaborately exposed to some essentials over others. So you can glean insights from this. And if you want to tweak your instructions or your content during those clinical rotations, you can. Similarly, those nursing programs that utilize patient logging, they may want to collect students' clinical procedures when they do patient logging. So students get to pick which clinical competency procedures are they getting to do via their interactions with patient. And once the student add in that data, you can review what were all the clinical procedures that the students got exposure to and what was the distribution of it across all the logs. So these provide you insights in the real time, so you can tweak any instruction. You can talk to your site partners to emphasize on certain procedures if the students are not getting adequate exposure and so on. So those were some examples. We have more, but in the interest of time, those were a couple of examples to showcase exposure to essentials. Now I'm going to take you to the live system and show you how to create that competency framework so you can measure achievement of competencies. So again, going into the live system. So I'm going to go back to the hamburger menu, and this time I'm going to click on competency management. When I click on competency management, I'm going to land on this nice dashboard, but I'm going to take 5 steps back and show you how this is set up. So I'm going to click on setup, and this is where you get to build your competency framework that I talked about, the 5 steps. So you can see here, I have set up multiple competency framework. For each standard or competency that I want to track, I have created a separate framework. So let me take an example of advanced level nursing essentials, and I'm going to click on configuration. The first step is to select the assessments that I want to include. So out of all the evaluations that have been configured or all the assessments, I want to pick these 2 assessments or evaluations to contribute to the competency tracking. And once I do that and I click on next, it's asking me what scoring scale do I want to use. So here I'm going to pick 1 to 5 because that's the scoring scale that I'm using for my clinical evaluations. And this is customizable. So depending on what scoring scale you want to use, we could change this. And I'm also getting to set up a threshold that I want each of my student to achieve at least a score of 3. So, and this is important because anytime a student receives a score of less than 3, it will be highlighted to you. So you can do the necessary intervention. Once I've done this, I'm going to click on next, and it's going to give me a nice summary that for this competency framework, which is the advanced level essentials, you have a score scale of 1 to 5, 2.99 is your threshold score, and you have 3 assessments that you've included. You click on save. I'm not going to save right now. Now, once you have done this, the next Last step that you have to do is map it. So I'm again going to click on map, and this is where now you go to your framework. You have 3 assessments. I'm going to click on evaluation of nurse educator by preceptor, and I see all the evaluation questions that are already there as part of this assessment. They pop up. You don't have to do anything. If it's configured, you'll see this automatically pre-populated. And now I go to each question and I see which essential does it help me test. So this is a list of all the essential that this particular question is already mapped to, but say this has a lot of mapping. I'm going to go to this one. The third one doesn't have any mapping. I'm going to go ahead and add and say that this particular evaluation question helps me test or assess 1.1, or you can say it helps me assess 1.1F. Again, it's up to you at what level do you want to map. Once you have done this, you save it, and this is a one-time activity. Done. Once you have done this for all your questions, you don't have to revisit this unless you're changing your evaluation or your assessments. So once you have done this, now let me show you what kind of reporting do we offer. This is your reporting dashboard. For every competency framework that you have created, you will see a tab like this. Right now, let me take example of advanced level nursing education. Now, off the bat, you can see you are getting a bird's eye view of all the students. Each student is a row. Each column is a domain, the 10 domains, the essential domains. And you can see that Blake Lee is struggling with domain 4, 5, and 6 because it's appearing in red because it's below the threshold of 2.99 that you have set, which is visible here. You can also select that I just want to see the students belonging to a particular group or cohort or track. For example, I can select BSN students, or I can select the DNP track, right? So it's up to you what you want to view. You can apply those filters. But this is a bird's eye view. To be able to help the students, you want to know which competency or sub-competency they're struggling with. So for that, you click on view report and you get this detailed, nice report in different formats. So let me take a couple of minutes to explain this. The first report, and this is for Blake Lee, which is an individual student, you're tracking the advanced level essentials, and you can see that Blake Lee has achieved the threshold, which is 3 or more in all the domains except 3 domains, which is 4, 5, and 6. They are below the threshold, right? On the right hand side, you can see a longitudinal view of how Blake Lee has been performing as they complete all their rotations or courses. So from first rotation to second rotation to third rotation, how are they doing on each of the competencies? Each competency is denoted by a different line over here, and these are all the competencies or domains. And if you just want to focus on, say, person-centered care, then I can strike off the other competencies and my graph becomes very clean because now I'm only looking at that one competency that I want to track, right? So we can see that on course 3, the student really performed well and they improved on this competency. So that is a course-based view. Now let's look at the spider graph. The spider graph gives you allows you to compare the class average versus the student performance, and this is a valuable report because if you get a student who says that the assessments were unfair and that's why I'm not performing well, it's not me, it's how the assessments are, you can show them this and say the class is doing fine, it's you. So in this spider graph, the light blue is the class average, the purple is the student average, and each node of this web is a domain or essential domain, right? But again, this is again bird's eye view. So if you wanted to click down on where is Blake Lee struggling, okay, I'm going to expand domain 1, and this is where you get the click down. So here I'm going to say, oh, he's doing well in domain 1, but under 1.1, there is 1.1e where Blake Lee seems to be struggling. Whereas in domain 4, he's struggling through and through because the overall average for domain 4 is 2.5, and I want the student to be at 2.9, right? So this gives you a click down on which competency or sub-competency the student is struggling at. Not only this, but we also give you an exportable comprehensive report, and I'll show it to you in Excel because that's the only way it will make sense to you. And here for each student, and this is a very busy Excel, and the reds are because this this particular student is struggling in some areas, but you have your competencies in the first three column, and then every column is a course, and under that course you may have one or two assessments or evaluations, and how did the student do on each of the competencies or sub competencies. So each row is a essential competency or subcompetency, and what is the student's average score on each one of those. And the last column here is number of times the student was evaluated for these competencies. So if the student was evaluated 16 times and they are still below the threshold, it's a concern area. But if a subcompetency has only been evaluated once for that student and they are under the threshold, it's not that much of a concern because the student will get more opportunities to make up. So this is a very detailed report, and it can give you more insights on how you can help that student. All right, quickly going back to my presentation, because I do want to have some time for questions, but these were our competency tracking reports. Now, the big question, are you able to track didactic competencies? Now, I want to talk a little bit about our roadmap and then come back to this. So in the next 6 to 8 months, our product is planning to do more enhancements for the competency tracking tool, where we are going to give you cohort level and group level insights. So right now, what I showed you was at a student level. Secondly, we are going to give you 360-degree dashboard for the student, which is calculated not just based on their clinical performance, but also from their didactic competency performance. So we are going to build integrations with LMS to import some of that data. And we are going to give you a student watch list. What are your bottom 20% performing students? What are your bottom 10% performing students? So you can always utilize that to help the students with their academic improvement. So with that, coming back to whether we can support didactic competencies, as our product builds those integrations and gives you a way to bulk import your didactic data, until that time, there is a way how you can account for the didactic competencies. So what I'm showing here is an evaluation for overall didactic competencies for each student. And this can be a milestone evaluation that you fill for each student at the end of their didactic phase before they start their clinicals. And for each student, for each domain or subdomain you get to pick, you give one composite score to that student for each competency. Once you do that, once you do that, in our competency tracker, you will see didactic competencies as one of the data points for you. So you know what the starting point for that student is at the end of their didactic phase, and you can then design the clinical courses or do the necessary interventions to give them those redundancies in the competencies that they are struggling or they still need to develop. So this is a way for you to currently log didactic competencies, so and to get a longitudinal view of how the student is doing. Last but not the least, you can also track skills in Exxat Prism, and you can either, for any student, you can see across the skills which skills has the student achieved or not achieved, or you can track for one particular skill which students have achieved it yet or not achieved it yet, and do the necessary intervention. We also have a very strong intervention module where the advisors and the advisees can collaborate to upload academic improvement plans, to schedule follow-up meetings, and to note down details about their discussions on their struggle areas and areas of improvement. So we believe that with all these tools, you will be able to support your student success goals and in turn your program success goals based on this. And it will also help you complete your curriculum assessment loop with all these features built in. And as I mentioned, we have role-based access, we have insightful graphical and exportable reports, we share with you the industry best practices, and we are evolving this to enhance it even more and more every month. And we are listening to what your asks are. So we are also evolving based on our user needs. These are all the resources that will cover what I covered in today's webinar. This is a 9-minute video that you can share with your colleagues, and these are detailed video tutorials and a document to go over everything that I showed you today. All right, so I think that is all that I wanted to share with you today. And before I take questions, let's do a quick poll. We would like to see if the competency management features that I showcased to you today, will they be helpful for you? Do you think they are helpful? Or to what extent will they help you? And I
Very.
see we have the responses, so we can close it. Thank you so much for responding. Most of you are saying that yes, these are adequate, and 20% are saying that they're partially adequate. And that's great because we can work with you to enhance and bring in more features that will help you address all your competency tracking goals. So, with that, we do have a couple of minutes left. So, let's try and take questions, Kanti.
Mhm. So one question is about the cost for the competency management module. So if you can address that first.
Yeah, sure. So for the 2025 year, it's free of cost. If you adopted this year, it's free for you. And starting next year, because this is a plus feature, there will be a nominal fee, and we can discuss the fee with you if you're interested. I actually also have the last slide, which I'm going to pull up. Please request a demo, and we can share with you. It's a very nominal fee starting next year, but this year is completely free, and our team can give you that code. But if you're one of our nursing customers already, we really want to encourage you to start adopting these features. We'll work with you. We are looking for early adopters to seek that feedback. How is it working for you? What additional ways do you want to track your competencies? Maybe you want to use your course grades as surrogate for your didactic competencies. We are already thinking about that. So we would love to have those conversations with you. All right, then. Thank you all so much for taking the time. And I hope that this webinar will help you achieve your goals for competency tracking and adopting the essentials. Once again, good afternoon, everyone. Have a beautiful rest of the day. And thank you. Bye bye.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you for joining us today.